This is the last activity that you're going to do before it's time to take your summative assessment. So what I would suggest you did first was complete the study guide and then come back and watch the screencast and check your answers, or you could do it one sentence at a time or one question at a time, but use this as a means of studying so you can kind of gauge what you know versus what you don't know and what you might need to spend a little more time studying. This is due on the day that we take our assessment, which is Friday, January 26th. So the first thing is just a review of terminology. We've repeated these questions throughout this unit, but making sure you know what the conjunctions are, what they do, and how they're used to build the different types of sentences. So the first question is, what do coordinating conjunctions do? So if you haven't done it, pause the screencast and then come back and check your answer. But they join words, phrases, and clauses. Throughout our studies of compound sentences, there was a little misunderstanding or misdefining this and saying that it's just used to combine two sentences to make a compound sentence, but it does more than that. It can combine words and phrases as well. But when you do find a comma with a coordinating conjunction, that tells you that you might have what kind of a sentence. And that's when we'd see a compound sentence. And I put list over here because just because you see a comma conjunction doesn't mean it's compound. You also then have to make sure, the next question is, what do you need to make sure of? You need to make sure that there's a subject and a verb on both sides. So then you're going to be doing a little practicing with writing. So I gave you a sentence here. It says, I like pie, comma, but I hate pudding. So I've got a comma conjunction in the middle of two independent clauses. And then our other formula is substituting that comma conjunction with a semicolon. I like pie, semicolon, I hate pudding. Now, of course, you would write more descriptive sentences. For the sake of our example here, that's just why I made it kind of short. So the next thing you need to do is know your coordinating conjunctions. What are they? Those are our fanboys. We need to know them so that when we recognize them with a comma, we know they could be compound sentences. They are for and nor, but, or, yet, and so. The next step looks at subordinating conjunctions. So the first question is, what do subordinating conjunctions do? If you don't have that done, go do it right now and then come back. The job of a subordinating conjunction is to introduce a dependent clause. Coordinating, join, subordinating, introduce dependent clauses. They come at the beginning. If we see a subordinating conjunction, what needs to be after it to ensure that it's a dependent clause and not a prepositional phrase? Well, you need a subject and a verb. What do you need? Oh, so when you find a subject and a verb after the subordinating conjunction, then you know that you have a complex sentence. So the next task said to label the sentence below as complex. Well, we know that when we find these subordinating conjunctions, we put a box around them, and then we underline the dependent clause and label the subject and verb. So here I did, since I want to do well on the last big test of the second quarter, is my dependent clause, and my independent clause is at the beginning. So we have the pattern ICDC. We did not need a comma. Well, here it says rewrite it so that the dependent clause is at the beginning and used as a transition, meaning you need a comma. So since I want to do well on the last big test of the second quarter, comma, I plan to start studying. And then my independent clause is at the end. And then you need to have some of your subordinating conjunctions memorized so that you can easily identify them in sentences. There are obviously a lot more than this. You have done them multiple times. You should have them written in your notebook, but make sure you know at least 15 of them. And focus on the ones that we see a lot, these WH words, that, so that, are prepositions that can also be conjunctions. So make sure you know those. Then on the back, you've got a little practice at identifying sentence types. So I'm just going to do the first three with you, and then you're going to go off on your own and do these. If you want me to check it before the test, you can bring it up during our work time. Number 1 says, if I had to choose any food to eat forever, it would be eggs. So your first step is to get rid of any phrases. I see to choose as an infinitive. I see to eat as an infinitive. So now I'm going to look to see, do I see a comma with a coordinating conjunction? And I see a comma, but not a conjunction, so I know this is not compound. So my next step is to look to see, is it complex? I'm going to look to see, is there a subordinating conjunction? And there is, if. If what? If I had to eat or choose to eat any food forever, there's my subject I. What would I do? I had. Remember that your infinitive is never going to be labeled a verb. It's not the main verb. It's actually it's an infinitive. It's doing a different job. So this sentence, the pattern was dependent clause, comma, independent clause, which is why there was a comma there. And my dependent clause is used as a transition. So this sentence is complex. Number 2, I would try it on your own and then come back and check your answer. To start, eggs can be cooked in a variety of different ways. So I see an infinitive here, and then I see 2 prepositional phrases, in a variety and of different ways. So my first thing I would do is look for a compound sentence. I see a comma here, but no coordinating conjunction, so I know it's not compound. Now looking at what's left, eggs can be cooked. I'm going to see, is there a subordinating conjunction? And there is not. So this sentence has to be simple. But I still want to verify it. I'm going to look, what's the subject? The subject is eggs. And the verb, it's actually a verb phrase, can be cooked is my verb. And I also see that this has an infinitive used as a transition. So that's just another thing for us to kind of take note of. Really want to make sure that we're reinforcing how grammar impacts our writing. We've got a transition here, and we've got a transition here, because those phrases and clauses are at the beginning of a sentence. All right, number 3, they can be scrambled, fried, or boiled, and they taste great either way. I do not see any phrases there, but I do see, I actually see 2 coordinating conjunctions, and they both have a comma in front of them. So I've got to read this a little bit more carefully and think about which comma is, or are both of them compound sentences, or are they part of a list? They can be scrambled, fried, or boiled. Well, I see another comma here. That makes me think that this comma or is being used as a list. So if I go back and think of this as a conjunction for a compound sentence, I'm going to look on this side. They can be. They is the subject, can be, and actually all of these words act like verbs, can be scrambled, fried, or boiled. So there's my first independent clause. They taste great either way. Here I'm talking about they, again, referring to the eggs. And they what? They taste. So I've got another independent clause. That means that this sentence is compound. All right, so you're going to take some time, go through the rest of them. Remember, sometimes there could be more than one preposition or one dependent clause, so be careful. And then when you're done at the bottom, you're going to just practice writing your own simple, compound, and complex sentence. If you need any help, make sure you come up and ask.